There I is. Hey everybody, thanks for coming on tonight. Going to be answering a few more questions here. And what a great day. I mean, almost kind of spring. Bright, early, got up and it's like almost 70 degrees, upper 60s, went out for a walk in the park in the morning. So what a good day. So here we are. I'm going to answer some questions again, and let me kind of get into my setup with my questions. So a good response from last week. There was a lot of questions. This week I have, again, a lot of questions. I don't know if I can get through all of them, but I'll get through what I can here on the show. So we'll go through these one at a time. And as usual, any comments or questions you have here, you can leave down. If you're watching on YouTube, down below, I see them. Instagram comments don't filter through the system somehow. I don't know exactly how all that works, but we'll see what we get. And this week, just had actually over the past week and a half or so, I had a couple inquiries regarding boudoir parties and bridal boudoir parties. So a couple of these questions today are going to be really themed about that, covering some things that just were asked to me about boudoir parties. So that's kind of on the list. And then there's a couple of items, just random stuff that I got, and we're going to put them in here and go through them. So hopefully you can answer this information, because we want everyone to go into their session, well based in what's going on there. So this has been fun to do. So I'm going to start off with our boudoir party question, and this was just over the past week or so, and it's like I'm thinking of throwing a boudoir party for my bridal party, and how does a boudoir party work, and what do we need to do to prepare? Like, this question alone could be its own entire show. Literally can talk about something like this that much, because it's such an open-ended question, but I'll kind of narrow it down and hit some of the points. But the woman I was speaking to, and it's great because I can get on the phone with somebody, it makes things so much easier. Her bridal party is like spread around the country, and they're all meeting in one location, and that's for them to coordinate. But it's about finding a place and scheduling and lots of questions going on that. So when it comes to boudoir parties, what people typically mean is obviously a group of women going in and doing a boudoir session all at one time. And this is something that, again, is probably as old as boudoir. It's fun to do. Happens a lot with bridal parties, but also I've done them for occasions like an anniversary, or like a birthday, like a 30th birthday or a 35th birthday or something like that, where a group of friends would come in and get together for this, and then do a boudoir shoot. So how does it work? Well, usually when it comes to bride, this question was more specifically about bridal parties, and this was the bride that contacted me, but usually it's not. It's one of the members of the bridal party, because sometimes it's even a secret and they're doing it for the bride. So this one, the bride knew about it. So usually it's being contacted by one of the members of the party. And as far as what does the group need to do to prepare, well, it gets involved. And sometimes if the group is traveling or they're going to one location, you may already have a location to do it. Someone's staying in a hotel or something like that. So usually the first thing, deciding on where everybody's going to meet, if there's going to be a central location, especially if people are traveling, usually there's going to be a hotel. If everybody is more local, and I'm in New Jersey, so if people are local, they can always go where I work, but a lot of times these are events that are not super local to where I am. So there's typically a hotel or a couple of hotel rooms involved where people are staying or renting. So usually the first thing is deciding where, especially if your group is spread around, where that central location is that everyone is going to be able to get together, and figure out where that's going to be. And then typically step 2, which is part of this as well, is how many women are going to be involved. Now, the one thing about, and a question about bridal parties is that everyone who's part of the bridal party does not necessarily want to take part in a boudoir party, and it's completely understandable. So usually this is not a good thing to surprise people with either. You want to sort of say, hey, this is what we plan on doing, who wants to take part or who doesn't want to take part. Now, the people who don't want to take part can still be there. They don't necessarily have to take care or take photos, but they can be involved as well, because usually, as I noted, this is part of a longer event in that day. They're just doing that as one part of their day and then moving on and to do other activities as far as the bridal party. So location, who's going to take part. Third part, actually this is the first part, but another part there is budget. And this is another thing you don't want to spring on somebody, because there's a lot of expenses involved in a wedding, so you don't want to necessarily burden people with one more expense if they can't. But both of these conversations I had were really budget centric. All right, and people often call me and ask, what does something cost? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's like calling a builder and asking how much a house costs. You got to have a bit more information before you can give somebody a price. So, discussing some options in there. It's good to give people a range, because again, not everybody wants to spend a ton of money on something like this, although sometimes they do. And so talking about budget, and then typically once I get an average idea of what people want to spend, I can give them some options again. And really, this needs to be kept very simple. I don't want to make it too complicated for people. And then the other thing is, how many people are going to be involved? Because when it comes to shooting a boudoir party, and I think one of these other questions was related to this too. So I won't get into this in too much detail. How many people are going to be there? How many people are going to be actually taking the photos? So there is a lot of planning. The more time you can give yourself, the better. It's a lot of back and forth between me and the person that's running it for the group. And then also sometimes they want makeup or hair done there, which is fine. But again, that depends on how many people and budget and so forth. And again, in the next question, I'll get into this a little bit more, because time is always a function. And one thing with these events is you got to keep moving. You got to keep getting through from person to person to person. Because let's just say, you have 5 women there, and usually you're not giving an hour a person, but I'll just use this for, explanation. If you have 5 people there, woman number 5 is not going to want to sit around there for 4 hours waiting her turn, going, oh my God, I've been here for 4 hours. When is it going to be? You want to keep everybody going and rotating through. So, there's definitely a maximum, sometimes, number of people, depending on how they want to break the session down. Is, is everyone just going to get a couple of digital pictures? Sometimes everyone gets a little photo book. Sometimes they want to give more time to the bride, and all the women in the bridal party are really chipping in to pay for the bride as part of a gift. So there isn't one necessarily right answer on how to do this. It is fairly involved, especially when you're coordinating 5 people. Sometimes there's more, although that's a lot. But essentially, those are a few of the things that you need to do to prepare. And the more time you can give yourself, the better. And definitely a little bit of work that goes in scheduling a boudoir party. So do it soon. The earlier you can jump in there and schedule your boudoir party, the better. It goes smooth. You have a great time. And as I noted, usually the women come in, they do their session, and then they're usually off to a brunch or off to a dinner or off to some other event. And it's kind of part of an overall day from beginning to end. So that's my experience in boudoir party land. And again, these first couple of questions are related, because I got a bunch of these over the past 2 weeks about boudoir parties. And another question that a lot of groups have is, for a boudoir party, Can we all do our shoots together, or is it done individually while the rest of us hang out? Just trying to figure out the vibe and how this whole thing works. So I got into this a little while ago, but yeah, this is an important thing. And the way I've always done it is a rotation, as I noted, because if you have 5 women, it's not really fun for woman number 5 if she has to sit there for 4 hours or 3 hours. It's like waiting for everybody else to go, then it's finally her turn, and then everyone's done, they want to get out of there, and this last woman's like, yeah, but it's my turn. So typically it just comes up in a rotation. So what I found that works best is one person comes in, do a pose or one particular thing, they go out, the next person comes in, and the next person comes in. So you keep everybody rotating through, so that way everybody is not sitting around for very long, and then everyone's talking in the other room or so, bring the next person in, and just keep rotating through the pictures. So that way nobody has to sit around for a long time. Don't usually have everybody in the same room at once. You can, and that tends to get more distracting. People aren't paying attention to what they're doing. They're all talking to each other. So usually you keep everybody outside and kind of rotate through, but every situation is different and can vary, and each group is it depends. So that's a quick answer to that. As far as typically it's done in a rotation. Okay, and last boudoir party question here is, are there any photographers that specialize in boudoir parties, or do most photographers offer this service? No, I don't think there are any photographers that just specialize in boudoir parties. It's pretty much part of just any boudoir photographer that will do that. But again, ask. I think most people who have been doing this long enough have worked with plenty of groups. It's not really something that they would be unfamiliar with. But again, as far as planning and cost and stuff like that, I don't think you're going to find someone who's going to say no. But if you don't see any, there may not be specific information on somebody's website about this. Some may not. Just call and ask, or email them and ask, and I'm sure you'll find that they will be very willing to accommodate you there. Okay, moving onward. This again is something as a photographer, women's photographer, you're dealing with on a regular basis. If the question is, I have scars / stretch marks that I'm pretty self-conscious about. How do you handle this in your photos? Do you edit them out, or can you work with it naturally? And as I noted, this is not unique to just like one person as much as you think. This is something I hear all the time, and it is not unusual that somebody is very self-conscious about something. A lot of times you may hear, I have a C-section scar or something like that, and people are very self-conscious about it. And of course, you're not going to, as a photographer, and I always tell people, yeah, we're not really going to be like zooming in and focusing on something like that. So people often, sometimes you'll find out, just really fixate on things that are not like a main part of the photo, but it's important to them, and they want to be assured that everything's going to be okay. So how do you handle this? If it is something like a C-section scar or a tattoo, or something smaller like that, genuinely, or usually it's not a big deal. Because if it is like a C-section scar or another scar, usually those areas are not something that are like front and center in a photo. It's not like right in front of the camera. If it is like a longer portrait or a lying down, it's, people's eyes are drawn not to that. So usually areas that people are very concerned about are not the primary focus of a photo. So first of all, it's not something we're zooming in on. And then also things like that, especially now, are very easily removed in Photoshop or so forth. So it's there, and then it won't be there in your final images. And then if it's something that gets a little trickier, for instance, you know, sometimes you work with somebody who has lost a tremendous amount of weight and they have extra skin or so forth like that. That gets a little bit more difficult. You know, you just work in a situation, again, where you're posing somebody or taking shots or laying them down where that particular area that they are really sensitive about, again, isn't right in front of the camera. So if somebody does have a lot of loose skin or something on their stomach, you lie them down and taking photos more of them lying down. So that's not in the photo. Another thing that I do a lot in that situation is tell them to bring kind of a sheer robe or some kind of a cover up, and they can still wear what they want to underneath, and you can kind of use that robe to camouflage a little bit and to hide things. So there are ways to certainly work around things that people are self-conscious about in that regard. It's not a big deal. Again, usually any photographer is going to be pretty good at handling that and working around it. Nothing to be afraid of or worried that's going to be, you know, in your photo that's going to cause problems there. Okay. Next question. Again, another super popular question. I get this all the time. Can I bring a friend along with me for support? I think I'd feel more at ease if I had a friend there. Yeah, why wouldn't you? And I'm not sure if this is allowed. And what I will tell you is rules will vary depending on who you are working with. I've always encouraged people to bring somebody along if that's what they want to do. What in the world is the problem with that? So I would say 25%, maybe, I don't know exact number of women bring somebody along with them, a friend. I've had just a woman recently brought her sister. So somebody comes along just to be there for moral support, and that's 1000% okay. What I found that sometimes causes an issue there, or where that doesn't always work out so well, is if the person that's the friend, the moral support, comes along, wants to be in the room doing the photos. Sometimes what you can find is, again, when you're working with somebody, or you know, it's kind of a little bit of work going on, actually posing and getting them to do the pictures. And if the attention is not between you and the client, and there's this whole thing going on between the client and her friend, that can be distracting. Where I've had, and it hasn't been really like a long time ago, when a woman's, how do you look? Do I look okay? Is this all right? Do my leg look right? And the friend is going, no, you push this here, you can push it there, and raise this up. And that it doesn't work out like great. So usually I'm always good. For me, I'm going to recommend, yeah, bring somebody along, no worries. Have them stay in the other room. You can always go and check up on if you need to, but not usually a big fan of having everybody together, because to me that sometimes works out to be more of a distraction than it is than a help at that point. And most of the time, like I said, when women are in, after 10 minutes, they're like, wow, there's no need to be anxious or nervous. I'm having like a great time. But you know, then they're usually okay after that, and it's not an issue whatsoever. Hey Mike, I'm doing a boudoir for my wedding this spring. What's one of your favorite poses? I want my ring in the shot. Okay. So there are many. I think what I could do on this gizmo is like pop up one of my kind that I really like doing. Let me see if I can get in and change the layout. I can show you. Here we go. So when it comes to doing bridal sessions, yeah, I was always a big fan of getting the engagement ring in photos and doing pretty photos and so forth. But one of my favorites that I have always done for a long time, again, is something like this, lying down. I don't think you can see my pointer on that. But that's okay. the ring here, you know, is kind of like the primary focus. The bride is smiling, and although this photo, the woman was wearing jeans, I think it was still a bridal session. Sometimes brides may just have bridal lingerie or something else on, but really kind of very cute and pretty, and it's always been a favorite for like years and years to go in and do like a pose like this, very soft. This one is really kind of shallowy, depth of fieldy, so everything is kind of a little bit more blurry than normal, but again, kind of just a soft, pretty kind of engagement ring type of a photo. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but I found this is just like a very natural kind of organic way to put a engagement ring in a photo rather than just, you know, somebody standing and like putting their hand out in front of you. It was just a little nicer, a little prettier. And there's many there, you know, and like in what I do, there's tons and tons of ways to do that, but that was one of my favorites that I've always liked. So I figured I'd show you that one. So easy to do, just got to lie down. The key there is to, you know, just make sure the photographer gets that focus right, and that one has smiling face in it. You don't have to be smiling, but I always like to have somebody smiling. We may do a version without that in there, but just sort of easy to do. Any photographer can kind of do a photo like that, and it's cute, goes in your wedding album, and it's fun. One of the most popular like photos that we do for years and years. What else I have here? So this one is, okay, so what's the protocol for nudity? I decide I want to try more revealing shots. How is that handled? Well, when it comes to boudoir photography and nudity, I think those two, nudity has been a part of boudoir since boudoir has started. So it is not unusual for someone to want to have nudity as part of a boudoir session. However, as usual, what I would say is always chat with the person that is doing your work first. Make sure that what your intentions are, they're okay with, because there's different kinds of nudity, you know. So boudoir type nudity, I'll call it for lack of a better word, again, more pretty, more beautiful. There may be shots that even though the woman may be nude, you're not really out there being fully exposed. Again, that photo just kind of had, you know, if someone's lying down. Let me see if I can bring that back up for a second. Let's see. So I don't have a, but here, imagine, you know, if this was like sort of a nude photo, you're not, again, focusing on body parts explicitly to focus on body parts. So there can be nudity in boudoir that, again, is just more beautiful or just happens to be part of what you're doing, you know, or if we do photos, there could be someone wearing a robe, again, a sheer cover-up or something like that, where even though it's not the focus, it's not about explicit, like, sexuality in a picture. So generally there's no issue doing something like that. Check in with your photographer. Now, also, as far as photography has changed a lot over the past, 15 years or more when it comes to boudoir, there's another type of nudity that's going on now. You know, there are definitely women who want to come in and do photos that are more sexual in nature, a bit more, I would say, explicit or so forth. And as I noted, just check with the person that's doing your work, because I know that it doesn't bother me, but there are photographers who do not want to work and do any type of explicit type of photos. It's just not what they want to do. They're just not comfortable doing it. Whether it's a man photographer or a woman photographer, I know there are photographers that just don't want to shoot that type of work, and that's okay. what I've seen over the past 10, 15 years or so doing this is probably due to the Instagram and stuff like that, you know, it is not such a big deal anymore. I mean, you know, it's hard to imagine, but a while ago seeing a woman in a bra was like, hide the children, you know, they were banned from society. Now it's like no big deal. So what tends to happen, I think, in boudoir is those boundaries just get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and it's fine because women are more comfortable with their bodies and doing that and so forth. So, you know, it's just a progression of how this business has gone. And I certainly have women that have come to me and said, hey, you know, I want to do something that's a little bit more wild or a little bit more erotic or whatever the case may be. And I'm always, sure, tell me a little bit more to make sure that it's, again, something I can accommodate and it's something that I want to do. I know I want to be in the loop if somebody has something in mind that's just along those lines. And it's not always that I'm just going to say no, but you just kind of want to be prepared and make sure you can accommodate that type of thing. So just check in with your photographer if you have an idea. Sometimes people see things online, send them photos or have a chat. And I know it's weird to talk about stuff like this sometimes with people you don't know, but if your photographer is experienced, there isn't a whole heck of a lot they haven't seen or photographed, and you know, it's just part of their job. So they'll give you a quick, yeah, no worries, or yeah, that's not the thing for me. But the last thing you want to do is have this more type of erotic or nude session that's not like boudoir nude planned. Show up to a photographer and then find out, yeah, I'm not really comfortable doing that. You know, and then you wind up with a situation and you've gone to somebody and your photos aren't going to be exactly quite what you expected them or wanted to be. Okay. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. I'm really self-conscious about insert body part here. Are there ways to pose or shoot that can help me feel more confident about it? Yes. So there are cheat codes for different body parts. And again, this gets very specific depending on the exact body part that you're talking about. Some are easier to work with than others. You know, if you're talking about somebody's hips or something like that, instead of making it the focus, you push things back. And so things are easier to work with than others. Again, certain poses or you know, make things more pronounced than others. So usually I would say, again, if this is something that I heard from a customer, tell me more. What is it? And, you know, then I could say, all right. So you know, either we don't have to do these photos or we can do X, Y, or Z. And if I have some examples, I'll share examples with the person. But as I was talking about, you know, earlier with the scarring and stuff like that, generally speaking, people really worry about stuff that's not that big of a deal. And then they find out after, I was just worried about or anxious about nothing for you know, no reason. So usually I've found that it's not a major deal, but again, just check with the person you're working with, and they should be able to handle any specific body part and help that look better in your photo. Not a problem. Okay, so I think this next question was too long and I needed to put it on 2 screens. So this is long, but this is relevant, and this is something I've dealt with actual customers through the years and just random people who have contacted me. This is a real thing, so this is kind of important. So somebody I know went in for a boudoir shoot intended as a gift and felt the session became more about fixing personal insecurities than capturing a moment. How do you ensure the primary goal of a photo shoot remains on creating a specific gift rather than implying something needs to be fixed? Good question. And just like there are many types of restaurants or many types of hotels there are many types of women's photographers out there. And I have to be very careful in not saying one type is wrong or one type is right. But if you approach it, I guess, like restaurants, you know, you can get all different types of food, from fast food to gourmet food to you name it, it's out there. And usually in the case of like when it's a restaurant, you know, oh, this is Mexican. I am just in the mood for tacos. And you go in there and you're not disappointed because you know what you're getting. When it comes to women's photographers, some of them, and usually this is on their websites, and why, and again, I don't want to say this is a bad thing, but I find a lot of newer photographers do this, that they get entrenched into this whole fixer mentality that not only are they a photographer, but they are there to heal people. So that's why you should not be surprised when you went in for an anniversary gift and then somebody thought, you were there to be repaired. I don't want to speak on why some photographers believe they are mental health professionals and this is part of their job. It's always been a little, but I do know that there are women's photographers who work with women, and it really is a great thing that they bring women in who may otherwise not feel great about themselves, and they spend a lot of time and effort, and it is more of this kind of a session where they're working to get people who may not typically feel great about themselves to walk away from that session and think, wow, I really boosted my confidence, or I'm looking at myself in a different light. And I've seen these people, they're wonderful in what they do. I think that is a small part. I think there is a big chunk that feel that this fixing is just part of their job, and it's not always the case. So I've heard this firsthand from people that they've called photographers and like, all I wanted was an anniversary present, and the woman spent 15 minutes on the phone with me telling how she was going to rebuild me. I think there is this assumption that from a certain group that like all women are broken, all women are damaged, and they've assumed this role that they are going to put people back together. But what I found is a lot of the times, and when women coming in, they're just looking for fun. Boudoir is fun. It's not a big serious thing, rolling around in your underwear, taking pictures. They're there for a gift. They're there for a wedding gift. They're there to have a good time and feel good about themselves. And not every woman comes into a boudoir session looking to be healed. However, just like you may walk into a Mexican restaurant if you didn't read the sign or anything and go in there and start looking for some pho. I want some grilled chicken pho, and no pho, just tacos. You may feel, something is wrong there. So I think that you, as a person getting involved with the boudoir photographer, need to pay a little bit more attention, because usually that is plastered all over their website. You cannot miss it. Healing and empowerment and every kind of, it's hard to miss. So I would say if you see that kind of a thing on somebody's website, you're probably going to get a dose of that in your session to some degree. It's a little awkward thing, I think, to talk about with somebody, but again, you can always ask, can I just come in for a simple photo session? I don't even know how you question that or bring that up in a question, but I would say, just pay more attention to the content on the website. And if you're there just for an anniversary gift, because so many women come in just for a present, And like I said, I know that happens. I've heard the stories multiple times myself on how things took off into this whole other area, and it leaves the woman feeling, the client very uncomfortable, in that situation. So it's not always a good situation for everybody involved. So that one, I would say, just pay more attention on the website. Look for those messages if they're on there, because usually they're going to be there. And when in doubt, just again, when you're talking in your consultation, just ask and find out about how their session typically goes, and bring up, I just want an anniversary present, or it's for my boyfriend's birthday. That's it. That's all I want to do. I don't need therapy. And by talking to someone, you can get an idea more about what their session's about. That's what I can say about that. And remarkably, I think that was our last question for today. So that was a good batch. A lot of information in there. Bridal boudoir party, that's big this time of year, so I was getting a bunch of questions about that, and some other stuff that was thrown in there. And you can really see again how this can start to become involved from the different types of photographers that are out there. So that's why, right, it can be super uncomfortable walking into a photo session and finding out you're suddenly there in a therapy session, and you would not be alone. And unfortunately, boudoir photography is not that simple for the women. You would think it is, but it isn't. Again, think restaurants. Think how, there's so many different types of restaurants out there. They are not the same. You've got your fast food to your gourmet, everything in between. And as we learned, you have your fun to your heavy therapy and everything in between. So it does take a little bit more work to go out and do some research. Make sure you're finding the photographer that's going to work the best for you. And what you're going to walk away with is going to be not just in your budget, but what you expect after the session. And that way you walk away with a good experience, because it is tricky. It's hard. With hundreds of women over the years, and finding a boudoir photographer is not as simple as you may think. So that's why we're here, to answer a few questions and maybe help people out in making the right choice or the smart choice. So thanks for everybody for stopping in this week. Any questions you may have, you can always leave them, in the YouTube down below, and I'll copy them and save them and to use them in a future episode. And that's all I got for today. So thanks for stopping by, a few minutes of your time, and we will be back next week with a brand new show, and I'll see you then. Bye.